The Train to Evermore. Part 1. The Station with No Name. The letter came on a Tuesday. No return address. No postage. Just my name, John C. Harris. Written in neat cursive that looked so familiar, it sent a shiver down my spine. It was a kind of handwriting no one uses anymore. Elegant, deliberate, like it belonged to a different era. And maybe in some ways it did. I had just come in from watering the tomatoes when I found it wedged between the door and screen. The envelope was thick, ivory-colored, the kind used for wedding invitations or funeral announcements. My hands were still damp from the garden hose, and the paper curled slightly where my fingers touched it. Inside, a single train ticket. One way. Evermore departure. September 14th, 9:12 a.m. platform. The old Maple Station. I chuckled. Must be a prank. I muttered, half expecting someone to pop out from behind the porch rail and yell, "Gotcha!" The old Maple Station had been closed since '89, boarded up, torn down, even if memory served. I hadn't thought about it in decades. It used to be the heart of our small town, a place where things began and sometimes ended. But then I saw the second note. Don't be late. M. M? My hands tightened involuntarily. It couldn't be May? May Thompson? The name stirred something deep inside, a ripple across the still waters of long-buried memories. She used to ride bikes with me down to that very station, back when the world was a lot bigger than our little town. We hadn't spoken in decades. I shook my head, laughed nervously, and slid the ticket back into the envelope. Still, I put it on the mantel, beside the picture of Martha and me on our wedding day, and left it there for 2 nights. I was going to throw it away. Honestly, I was. But the way it sat there, so quiet, so insistent, it felt like it was waiting for something. For me. Then Victor called. "You got one too?" he said. His voice was rougher than I remembered, but unmistakably his. Victor Grant. My oldest friend, though we hadn't really talked since Martha's funeral. Thought it was a joke. Me too, until I called May. She's going. Wants us to meet her there. My mouth dried. There? You mean? The station. I walked to the mantel and picked up the envelope again. The paper was still heavy in my hands, as if weighted with something more than just a train ticket. September 14th came in quietly, like a breath you don't know you're holding. I wore my best jacket, not for the train, but for May. I hadn't seen her in almost 40 years. Not since that last goodbye under the willow tree, when we were 22, and she was leaving for California with dreams too big for our town. Victor pulled up in an old red truck. He was heavier than I remembered. His hair all salt and no pepper, but his grin was exactly the same. "You sure about this?" he asked, looking at me over the steering wheel. "Nope," I said. "You?" Not even a little. We both laughed, but it felt a little hollow. The drive to Maple Station was silent, not for lack of things to say, but for fear that speaking would ruin the spell. It felt like we were walking back into a dream, or maybe into something else entirely. We turned onto the gravel road where the station used to be, and there it was. Whole, clean, lit from within like a memory that had waited for us to come back. The station looked untouched by time. No graffiti, no broken windows. The paint on the trim was fresh, a warm cream that glowed in the early light. The clock tower ticked, its hands frozen at 9:11. May stood under the tower, hands folded in front of her, the wind catching strands of silver in her long, dark hair. She looked exactly as I imagined she would. Older, sure, but still May. Her posture was the same, her eyes alert and filled with that quiet confidence I always admired. She smiled when she saw us. A real smile, not polite or hesitant, but warm, familiar. No words were exchanged. She just held up her ticket. We each did the same. The station doors opened. Inside, time unraveled. The walls bore posters for movies that hadn't shown in 50 years. A newspaper on the bench bore the date June 6, 1963. There was no dust, no decay, just the polished hush of anticipation. A single track stretched out beyond the platform, into morning mist. At 9:12 sharp, we heard it. A whistle. Not like the trains today, but one from long ago, full of steam and sorrow and possibility. The locomotive rolled in, sleek black with brass trim, its name painted in gold along the side, Evermore. A conductor stepped down, dressed like someone from the 40s, and tipped his hat. "Tickets, please." We boarded. The car was unlike anything I'd seen before. Velvet seats, warm lighting, windows that shimmered not with the outside world, but with memories, flickering like old home movies. We took our seats. Silence settled, thick and reverent. Then May reached over and held my hand, and Victor whispered, "What do you think this is?" I looked out the window. A boy was fishing in a river I once knew. A dog barked. My father laughed. "It's the past," I said, "and maybe a way forward." The train whistled again, and we began to move. I woke up that morning with the feeling that today wasn't going to be just any ordinary day. The comfort of the morning, the smell of freshly brewed coffee. But there was something else in the air, like my past was quietly whispering to me. After breakfast, I stepped outside to check on the garden. My hands instinctively touched the old wooden fence, where my childhood had hung for years like a memory untouched by time. That's when I noticed an envelope wedged between the door and the screen. It was thick parchment-colored, with my name written in neat cursive, John C. Harris. No postage, no return address. Just my name. I carefully opened it, and inside was a single ticket, old-fashioned, printed in golden letters. One way, Evermore. Departure, September 14th, 9:12 a.m. Platform, the old Maple Station. It had to be a joke. The old Maple Station had been shut down and torn down years ago. I couldn't imagine such a place still existing. But then I found another small note inside. "Don't be late, M." M? That could only mean one person. May, my childhood friend who used to ride bikes with me when the world felt so big and full of possibility. I placed the ticket on the mantle, right next to the photo of Martha and me on our wedding day, and nearly forgot about it until Victor called. The phone rang late that evening, just as the sun was dipping below the horizon. It was Victor. His voice was rougher than I remembered, and there was a strange urgency beneath his usual calm. "You got one too?" he asked without preamble. I swallowed hard. "Yeah, thought it was a prank." "Me too," he said, "until I called May. She's going. Wants us to meet her there." There was a silence heavy enough to hear the clock ticking on my mantelpiece. "The station?" I asked finally. "Yes, the old Maple Station." It felt like something out of a dream, or a memory I wasn't supposed to have. The morning of September 14th arrived quiet and cool. I dressed in my best jacket, not for any ceremony, but because I wanted to look presentable for May, whom I hadn't seen in nearly 40 years. Victor arrived just as I was stepping out. His old red truck looked like it'd seen better days, but the grin on his face was the same wide, reassuring smile I'd known since childhood. We drove down the cracked gravel road that led to the station, or where it had been. The trees had grown thick around the clearing, but as we rounded the bend, there it was, whole, untouched, lit softly from within, like a beacon in the morning mist. May was already there, standing beneath the old clock tower, her silver hair catching the breeze. Her smile when she saw us was gentle, filled with 1,000 unspoken words. No one spoke. Instead, we all held up our tickets. The station doors swung open with a creak, inviting us inside. The inside was frozen in time. Posters from movies I hadn't seen since I was a boy hung on the walls. The wooden benches gleamed under soft lamplight. A newspaper lay folded on one bench, dated June 6, 1963. It was as if the years had melted away. A single train track stretched out into the fog beyond the platform. At exactly 9:12 a.m., a distant whistle blew, not sharp or harsh, but rich and deep with nostalgia. The train rolled in, a sleek black engine trimmed in gleaming brass. Its name painted in golden letters along the side, Evermore. The conductor stepped down, dressed in a crisp uniform from another era, tipping his hat as he called out, "Tickets, please." We handed over our tickets and stepped aboard. The train car was warm and inviting, with plush velvet seats and soft lighting that bathed everything in a golden glow. The windows shimmered strangely, reflecting scenes that flickered and danced like old home movies. Memories, I realized, from a time long past. May reached across and took my hand. Victor leaned in and whispered, "What do you think this is?" I looked out the window. A boy was fishing by a river I once knew. A dog barked nearby. My father laughed softly in the distance. "It's the past," I said quietly, "and maybe a way forward." The train whistled again, and we began to move. The rhythmic clatter of the train wheels against the rails was almost hypnotic. Outside, the mist thickened, swallowing the landscape in soft gray. Inside, the flickering memories in the windows grew clearer, more vivid, like stepping into a time when the world was younger and simpler. May squeezed my hand gently. "Do you remember the summers by Lake Harrow?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, the image of us fishing off the old pier coming back. "How could I forget? You were always better at catching the big ones." She smiled wistfully. "And you were always the one who told the stories." Victor leaned back, staring into the window's glowing scenes. "It's like we're riding through our own lives. But why now? Why here?" I didn't have an answer, but the question hung in the air, heavy and unanswered. Suddenly, the car jolted, not violently, but enough to remind us we were moving somewhere, not just drifting in memories. The conductor appeared again, silently moving down the aisle. His eyes held a gentle kindness, but also an unfathomable depth. He paused by me, tipped his hat once more, and said quietly, "Next stop, Evermore." The name echoed in my mind. What awaited us there? Was it a place, a time, or something else altogether? The train continued onward, cutting through mist, carrying us deeper into the unknown. The seat beside me was empty for a moment, and I found myself staring out a scene from decades ago, a younger version of myself, sitting under the old willow tree by the riverbank, a book in hand, lost in a dream. A pang of longing struck my chest. May's voice pulled me back. "John, look." The window shimmered and shifted, revealing a different memory, a summer night dance, laughter echoing under strings of lanterns. Victor was there too, clumsy and joyful, spinning with a girl I didn't recognize. "Is that you?" I asked. He chuckled softly. That was a time I wish I could go back to. For a moment, all three of us sat in silence, swallowed by memories that were both painful and precious. Then May spoke again. "Maybe that's why we're here, to face what we left behind." The train slowed as it neared the next station. The fog parted, revealing a small town frozen in time. Streets lined with familiar faces, places we once knew, untouched by the years. The doors slid open and we stepped out together. The air was thick with the scent of pine and old wood. We didn't know what awaited us in Evermore, but somehow we all felt it was a journey worth taking, not just through the past, but into the heart of who we really were. To be continued.